Welcome to this explainer. I want you to just imagine something with me for a second. Right now, somewhere in northern Tanzania, a Hadza man is taking a nap in the shade. It's the middle of the day, and he is already completely done with his work. The Hadza are actually one of the very last hunter-gatherer groups left on Earth, and they're living almost exactly the way every single human being lived for 300,000 years. Hunting, gathering, cooking, literally every single chore required to keep them alive takes about 2.5 hours a day. I mean, most of us hit that amount of work before our first morning coffee break. They've never been told to be somewhere at a specific time. They have almost none of the chronic diseases that take such a huge toll on modern humans, and researchers consistently note that, well, they simply look happier than we are.
Okay, let's dive into this. How exactly did we even measure this? Well, back in 1968, an anthropologist named Richard Lee actually tracked the time of the Kung Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert down to the very minute, and the data he published was just staggering. He found that their total workload came out to roughly 15 hours per week.
Which brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it? What did ancient humans actually do all day? When you're only working 15 hours a week, how do you spend all that extra time? Just think about the stark contrast to your own life. Your ancient ancestors had zero bosses. They paid absolutely no rent, and they didn't really even have a concept of the weekend because almost every day was practically a weekend. So let's just walk through what a typical day actually looks like, starting right at the beginning.
Part 1. Sunrise, the gossip system.
It's sunrise. You wake up as the sky gets lighter and the temperature shifts. You're sleeping on a hide laid over flattened grass, maybe near a small fire that someone kept alive through the night. Everything you own in the entire world fits into a single bag. You've got a digging stick, a bow, some hides, maybe a few beads from your sister. You look around, and there are roughly 25 to 30 people in your camp. But here is the kicker. You know every single one of them. You have known them your entire life. Your grandmother is sleeping just a few feet away from your own kids. There are no alarms ringing. Nobody is on a clock. And the first hour of the day, it's entirely dedicated to talking. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner found that Bushmen spend hours every single day in casual conversation. But this isn't just trivial gossip, right? Conversation is actually the operating system of the camp. It's how they figure out who is sleeping with whom, who told a great joke last week, or who's been a bit quiet and might be sick. More importantly, it is their entire legal system. Whispers are used to punish broken promises, jokes are deployed to stop anyone from hoarding meat, and if you become truly unbearable, eventually no camp will have you. Exile is the ultimate, incredibly rare punishment.
And this brilliantly illustrates a really famous story from 1969. Richard Lee, the anthropologist we mentioned earlier, wanted to do something nice for the Kung camp for Christmas. So he went out, bought the absolutely biggest, fattest ox he could find, and brought it to the camp as a gift. But instead of thanking him, the Kung made fun of his gift for weeks. They relentlessly mocked the ox, telling him it was way too skinny, that the meat was going to be terrible, and that he had basically wasted everyone's time. Lee was incredibly confused, until an elder finally explained the lesson. You see, when a hunter brings home a huge kill, the camp never celebrates. They mock it to keep the hunter from feeling superior. Every joke, every whisper is a highly calibrated tool for egalitarianism. Nobody is allowed to feel above anyone else. We build prisons to keep order. They handle things just by talking.
Part 2. Mid-morning. Grandmothers and hunters.
As the morning talking naturally winds down, we move right into mid-morning. This is when the men typically gather for the hunt. Frank Marlowe, who studied the Hadza for decades, found that hunting is certainly dramatic, but it's highly unreliable. A hunter might walk 20 miles in a single day, tracking animals with arrows tipped and desert rose poison. But on any given day, most hunters come home totally empty-handed. A successful kill might really only happen once every few days. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the breakdown of calories here. It completely shatters the old man-the-hunter myth. The hunters are actually not the ones reliably feeding the camp. The women are. Women go out in groups of 3 to 8 every day, climbing and digging, and they return with a steady supply of food that absolutely does not depend on luck. As the old saying goes, the men feast you, but the women feed you, reliably providing way more than half of the camp's total calories. And you know who the absolute powerhouses of this gathering effort are? The grandmothers. Women in their 50s and 60s actually bring back more food per day than mothers in their 20s, and they'll often walk 5 to 10 miles well into their 70s. This leads us directly to the grandmother hypothesis. It's this brilliant evolutionary theory that explains why humans are the only primate species where women live for decades past menopause. By having grandmothers available to forage and feed their grandchildren, the entire human species just became vastly more successful. Now, while the adults are out working, the kids are watching. Anthropologist David Lancy studied traditional communities and found that for hundreds of thousands of years, children learn through what he calls the school of play. Just look at this progression. At age 3, a child is just playfully poking around with a digging stick next to her mom. By 6, she can actually find food on her own. By 8, a boy can hunt a bird entirely alone, and by 10, they are contributing meaningfully to the family. They learn all of this entirely through mixed-age playgroups. The older kids teach the younger kids, and adults almost never interfere. They just figure it out and copy the adults through play. Part 3. Midday. Sharing, rest, and play. By midday, the first food starts returning to camp. And here is where we see a truly fundamental rule of human history. Sharing is absolutely not optional. If a Hadza man kills a large animal, he doesn't own that meat. He must distribute it. In fact, the hunter himself often ends up getting one of the worst cuts of meat, while the rest of the camp gets the absolute best. Anthropologists actually believe this constant, mandatory sharing is one of the main things that built the human brain. Think about it. You have to track who gave what to who skipped their turn, who stepped up when it really mattered. It requires this complex social arithmetic that's just unseen in any other species. In a world completely without banks, generosity is your savings account. After eating, the middle of the day is hot, really hot. So nobody works. People take naps, they sit in the shade, they weave grass, repair their arrows, and maybe spend an hour peeking lice from each other's hair. Which, okay, sounds a bit gross to us today, but biologically, it's really just an excuse to be physically close to the people you love.
During this afternoon downtime, it's really worth noting how they handle life's realities. Bodily functions and sex simply don't carry the heavy taboos that modern humans place on them. And while they are human, meaning, yes, jealousy, affairs, and grudges absolutely still happen, they resolve conflict by voting with their feet. If you really can't stand someone, you just pack all your belongings in about 15 minutes and go live at another camp for a few weeks until the heat passes. You just leave. It's this incredibly simple, brilliant conflict resolution tool that modern folks simply can't use, mostly because we're tied down by a 12-month lease or a 30-year mortgage. Part 4. Late afternoon and evening. Connections and returns. As the heat finally breaks in the late afternoon, the pace picks up again. People will walk a few miles to visit relatives in neighboring camps. They trade some more gossip, they arrange marriages. By the time you are an adult in this society, you know more than 100 people personally, by name, with their complete, full life history. And as the sun gets low, the hunters return. When they come back empty-handed, as they usually do, the women who gathered all day quietly step up and become the heroes of the camp. This brings us to the evening. The cooking begins. Roots are roasted right in the coals, meat is boiled, and seeds are actually chewed soft for the little children. Then, the entire camp eats together. This is an unbroken tradition stretching back 300,000 years. Now, we have to be super clear here. This is not some magical utopia. They get sick, they bury children, they grieve, and they lose people they love just like anyone else. But what they entirely lack is that slow modern ache. They don't lie awake at night comparing themselves to strangers on the internet, and they certainly don't suffer the misery of working pointless jobs to pay for a life that never quite arrives. So, the crucial point is summarized perfectly by an anthropologist in the late 1960s who looked at all this evidence and called early humans the original affluent society. Now, he didn't mean they had immense physical wealth or giant piles of possessions. They literally had almost nothing. What he meant was that they had an absolute abundance of time. Part 5. The modern trade-off. What we kept versus what we traded. Let's move to and see how this builds into the present day, because there's a profound contrast between our evolutionary past and our relentless modern hustle. Humanity made a massive pivot, and we really need to pause and weigh the philosophical reality of the trades we made. On the left side of the ledger, let's be honest, we got monumental wins. We got vaccines, antibiotics, indoor plumbing, and incredibly long lives. We stopped watching 4 out of every 10 children die before the age of 5. Nobody, absolutely nobody, is suggesting we go back. But look at the right side. We also made trades we almost never talk about. We invented agriculture, we invented bills, we invented bosses, and we invented spending our best days doing work that someone else actually owns. We essentially traded away our free time and our absolute equality in exchange for modernity. And here is why this matters to you right now. Today, you inherited their bodies. You have the exact same nervous system as that Hadza person napping in the shade. Your body physically craves the sun. It craves sleep. It craves touch, deep conversation, and time spent doing genuinely nothing. Biologically speaking, we are literally still hunter-gatherers.
We just stopped doing it. We are living in a profound evolutionary mismatch. So, knowing that your brain and your body were built for 15-hour work weeks, shared meals, and plenty of rest, how will you spend your day today?